Thank you very much. I'm going to speak in English. Well, Claudio Besana is not here. He's my colleague from Catholic University of Milan. Anyway, the work is a joint work we are doing now. It's a work in progress. So it's a research we are trying to do, also contacting local institutions, consortium, Gorgonzola consortium, municipalities, enterprises, heirs from Galbani, Vernizzi, and so on, to find documents and to have the support for our research. I'm focusing on the 19th century, essentially, and Claudio instead is focusing on the 20th century. But I will explain also his part of the work. Well, I'm talking about the first results of this research, about the history of Gorgonzola. As you know, Gorgonzola is a cow milk cheese with blue mold. It's a soft cheese, and its production is localized essentially in Lombardy and in a part of Piedmont, so in the north of Italy. In the history of Gorgonzola, we can find a first moment of big success at the end of the 19th century, in the last decades of the 19th century, and until the First World War, and then again in the 20s. And then we will have a decrease in the production and in the exportation of the product of the cheese on the international markets, and the recovery which will start only in 1970s and later on. So it's a late recovery. And what about the origins of this cheese? Well, the name is the name of a small city near Milan, where effectively the cheese was produced for the first time, and the production was a seasonal production due also to a connection with the migration of livestock herders from the mountains, from the Valsassina Valley, in particular in the north of Milan, because these herders in the winter came down in the plain from the hills, from the mountains, to stay in the farms of the plain, where they could have forage during the winter, and where they could produce the Gorgonzola. So at the beginning, it was an exchange, an important exchange between migration livestock and the farmers in the plain, particularly in the year of Gorgonzola. Here is the migration of livestock from the mountains to the plain, and here we have some of the roots of the migration. You see that Gorgonzola is at the center of these roots, and the connection was very strong. The period was a period of big increase in the production. We had a combination of reasons, starting from the unification, the political unification of Italy in 1861, but particularly from 1870s and onwards. We had a combination of reasons for which the production of Gorgonzola could increase. First of all, we had the Agrarian Crisis, starting really in the 70s, with dropping corn prices, which led many farmers to convert their production from corn to livestock and dairy. And so we had also an increase in the production of milk, a huge availability of milk and an increase in this supply, and the possibility so also to increase the production of cheese. Together with the crisis, we also had a huge migration of Italians to Americas, to England, and to many other countries. This involved also a new international market, which was opening for the production of traditional cheeses, Italian cheeses, and also for Gorgonzola, which followed this migration of population in the new market. And particularly England became the central market for this kind of cheese, Gorgonzola. In England, we also had the foundation of many branches from the enterprises which were that a huge production of Gorgonzola. In the same time, the production of Gorgonzola spread from the area near Milan to other areas within Lombardy, but also in Piedmont towards Novara especially, so that the production spread all around the north of Italy, Lombardy and Piedmont. You can see here also a different picture in the north, because in this period we also have a differentiation of the production, of the stages of production. So before, the production was in the plain a seasonal production, and it took place in winter or autumn, okay? Then, starting from the 1870s and also the 1880s, we had the building of new kind of casere, which were stores where the cheese could be aged, and so the production could extend the period and involved all the year, not only the winter. The organization changed because we continue to have the production of fresh Gorgonzola in the plain, but then the cheese was transported to the mountain, and especially in Valsassina, to age. So also, this is the spread also in the other part, also the organization and the capital required to the production increased. The casere were located especially in this area of Valsassina because of some natural sources. We had in the mountains some cool airs coming from the rocks, and so the buildings were founded near these kind of rocks from which the cool air was coming. It was an air condition, a natural air condition. Many firms were investing in this new kind of buildings. They were firms from the area of Milan, but also starting from the area of Novara in Piedmont. They all invested capital in the organization of the aging of the cheese in this valley, Valsassina Valley. Here we have, for example, the Gorgonzola cheese establishment called Casera. Bodega Forms was one of the most important of the time, but this is a Locatelli firm and a Casera from Locatelli firm in Balabio near Lecco. And here we have the ripening room of Corsi firms also, always near Lecco, and here a packing room. So Gorgonzola was going around Lombardy, a production of a plane going to the mountains and so on. The fundamental role of the merchants was the real key of the process, because we had big merchants with an increasing trade, local trade, but also international trade, which were involved in this production. The credit was very important, this moment of anticipating the money necessary for the production of cheese, of Gorgonzola, and also for the aging, the period of aging of this cheese. So big merchants were arising, and in this transformation, we also had the foundation of large commercial enterprises, particularly in Lombardy. We had the foundation of firms as Galbani, Locatelli, Polenghi Lombardo, Invernizzi, which were all involved in this production and had a large control of the supply of milk and cheese. They could sell on the market, especially on the international market, where they founded new branches. For instance, in London, especially in London, but not only, in New York, in Buenos Aires, and many other places. And this was the beginning also of a standardization of the production, with this new kind of enterprises, which little by little shifts from crafts production to an industrial production. Obviously, the industrial production was not only concerning Gorgonzola, but many other cheeses. So in Lombardy especially, we had the birth of industrial firms and the shifts from craft to industrial production. Then, in the period of the 1930s, well, the situation changed. We had a period of crisis in the production and in the exportation, and especially after the Second World War, we had a huge competition, international competition for this kind of product. We also had a change in the organization of the production and in the stage of the aging of the cheese, because of the possibility to use electricity and new refrigeration systems, so that the firms could close down the caves, the buildings they had in Valsassina, in the valley, and could instead provide the aging process in the plain, in other stores, and so on. Starting in the 1920s, many stores of this kind were built up in the plain, also in Piedmont, and especially later in Novara, Vercelli. In Novara we had a big building after the Second World War, which was able to store 310,000 of wheels of Gorgonzola. And the area of Novara was emerging with thousands of small and medium producers which could store and age their cheese in this big magazine. For the area, the production of Gorgonzola was and became really very important, because the 2/3 of milk was used to the production of cheese, and the cheese was for 19% Gorgonzola. So also the prices of milk was related to the prices of the cheese of Gorgonzola. So we had two areas which were involved in the production of this kind of cheese. A first area of specialization in Novara, in the province of Milan, near Pavia, and the second area, less important, in the rest of the Milan province, near Bergamo, Brescia, Como, Cremona, and in Piedmont, also in the area of Cuneo and Vercelli. In this evolution also, we can see that the period after the Second World War was of main difficulties for the production. If you look at the figures, you see that they are decreasing a lot respect to the period before. We reached the top in the exportation, for instance, in 1925, and then the decreasing was continuing. The problem after the Second World was the international competition. Well, first of all, we had a lot of imitation of Gorgonzola all around the world, and particularly in Denmark with the blue Danish cheese, which gained the market of England and London. So we lost the market, and this was a big loss. But also we had other similar cheeses, similar to Gorgonzola, produced in Austria, in Germany, in France. We had an Austrian Esterzola, a German Cambuzzola, something similar. And also we still continue to have a small size of enterprises. We continue to have a lot of small and medium enterprises, and also our biggest firms, as Locatelli or Invernizzi and Galbani, couldn't face the challenge of the foreign multinationals. So they wasn't so big as they were Danone or Nestlé and so on. So during this period, we had to face also a challenge for globalization, internationalization, and these big multinationals, which were interested also in the Italian market and in the Italian enterprises. So that we little by little lost also these big enterprises, which were acquired by Nestlé, by Danone in the 1980s, and later we know we have Lactalis, which is dominating the market. So in this competition, we also had a reaction by the producers, but it was a reaction which was a bit late. Anyway, we had already in the 1955 the Italian controlled denomination of origin after the Teresma agreement. But the consortium was founded only in 1970, yes. Before, we had the birth of two kinds of unions, one in Novara and one in Milan. One in Novara, and this was in the 1968. So the producers founded two different unions. A consortium in Novara, which gathered small and medium entrepreneurs, and another consortium in Milano, which gathered large enterprises and which could not stay together. So we had a problem for some years, and later, as I said, in the 1970s, we had a union and only one consortium based in Novara, with an unification of the forces trying to face this international competition, and a new action started. In fact, we had the creation of a label indicating the origin, and this was a metallic stencil with consortium's logo, which you can see maybe there. We had the introduction of stamps, the application of a countermark on the product's aluminium packaging, and each producers and cheese refiners had to pay a fee for the use of this metallic stencil. The problem was to control the quality and to limit the marketing of blue cheese under the name of Gorgonzola. So imitation, to control imitation and to regain the market. In this period, the consortium began to check the provenance of milk, to analyze and control the quality, and also to make public relation marketing for the cheese, advertising through television, through radio, through newspapers, and so on. In fact, we had a polycentric system with two areas emerging, Novara and Milano, but with the possibility of the production of cheese, of Gorgonzola, in many cities, in many areas of Lombardy and of Piedmont. These are, if you look them, you have the area, terroir of production of Gorgonzola. In fact, from the 1970s, we had a recovery of the production and also of the exportation of this kind of cheese. And maybe, obviously, one of the effects of having a consortium, of having a label, of having a control on quality, and so a specific typicality of cheese helped in this recovery and in this process in which we tried to gain again the market we lost before. As you see, England is no more one of the market of destination of this production, but only for a few amount. The main countries are now Germany and France. Also, the exportation increased, and this happened in a huge amount starting from the 1990s. And at the end, we can say that it was a success, but it was a late success, and it was a recovery which was pushed by the international competition. And so, in some way, we had a reaction of the local enterprises, and they played in a late moment, later on. And also the fact that multinational could acquire the biggest firms was not instead a success. So we had two different aspects of the history, ending in different ways. From one point of view, we have a loss because of the loss of the biggest firms. On the other way, we had the success of typicality on the international market, and so this is a success. So it's a debate that we can have about this kind of history. Thank you very much.